All right, YouTube. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast. Talking Auburn football. Go ahead and share this video to as many media outlets as you can. Want to give a shout out to all the subscribers out there, especially my very first subscriber. That's actually, ironically, an Alabama fan, but a great friend of mine and frat brother, Andre Ivy, who was a great supporter of the channel. Also, A.U. Robinson, F. Fitzgerald, all those guys that really support the channel. And if I didn't mention you, it charged my head and not my heart. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle. Big week for all of the teams in the SEC. A very anticipated week, which is the SEC Media Days. Bryan Harsin on boards at Auburn right a week or so or after Gus Malzahn was fired. As time progresses, the fire starts to get a little hot for Bryan Harsin. Of course, not on the hot seat. He hadn't even coached the game yet. But they're burning questions that are going to be asked at the SEC Media Days to Bryan Harsin. I'm pretty sure with his level of preparedness that he's going to be ready. He's going to be ready for all the questions that are going to be fired his way because the questions are coming. And when you think about the questions that are coming, it's so many loaded levels of questions that Auburn fans and that the nation have as far as a football coach coming from a non-Power 5 program to basically the hotbed of college football, the SEC, one of the more successful conferences in all of college football, national championships, constantly in New Year's Six Bowls, have the best recruiting classes in the country. How are you going to compete? That's one of the biggest questions right now. How are you going to compete? You're green. That's one of the most huge questions. What do you bring to the table to where you're going to be able to compete with Kirby Smart, with Dan Mullen, with albeit Nick Saban? I mean, that's a question in and of itself. You got to face Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and Ed Orgeron at LSU every year. So how are you going to compete? That's going to be one of the burning questions. How are you going to have the recruiting edge, the recruiting competitive edge to compete with these teams on a year in and year out basis? That's question number one. Number two, you got a quarterback situation. Everybody knows in the SEC and Power 5 football, in order to compete, you got to have a good quarterback. Some say Bo Nix right now may or may not be a good quarterback. Of course, you got the offensive line you got to take into account. Then you got to take into account decision making, things of that nature. But that's going to be a question too. Where do you see Bo Nix progressing from the time you onboarded to now to be the type of quarterback that won't be a perceived liability? I don't think Bo Nix is a liability. I think at his optimal level of play or potential, I think Bo Nix can be one of the better quarterbacks in the country, given the right scenario. So I'm casually optimistic to see how Bo Nix progresses under this level of coaching or this perceived level of coaching. Another thing that a lot of folks are not considering is the fact that strength and conditioning is becoming a real level of forefront for this team. Because in the big games, especially Texas A&M, Georgia, and Alabama, excuse my voice, Auburn got pushed around. They got pushed around because they just weren't strong enough at times. So we got to consider that. But I really look forward to seeing what's thrown at Bryan Harsin this coming Thursday in the SEC Media Days. Let me know what you think about this video. Go ahead and comment, like, and subscribe. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.